researchers or students, which ones do you think worked and which ones do you think maybe didn't work so well? Do you mind?
Sure. So first, yeah. So I think you're talking about the Delta Phi effort.
Correct.
Okay. So it's true that that what inspired me to create it was the so-called awakening when many organizations here in the US signed a petition around access for African Americans and participation, and then took a day of pause where discussion was supposed to take place. And it occurred to me that if that was going to be going on, then perhaps the APS could be useful as a convener, namely by presenting curated material that then people could go away and have their discussions. The organizers of the pause objected to us doing that. So, we stood down and there's no problem. But we did implement it in a series of later online seminars. At some point, I realized that this tool that I had sort of invented by accident could in fact serve a much more substantial purpose for the American Physical Society. Namely, that this was a way for the leadership of the APS to directly speak to membership on issues around values. And there are three principles that I developed for this. One, the organization, someone in the organization has to express its values. Now, usually you'll find this in a mission statement or, a similar document. So the first question is, what are our values? Do we understand ourselves what our values are and practices? And then number two is to have the evidence about what our practices are, compare those to our two values. And if there's not an alignment, then the next point is obviously what do we do to make our practices align with our stated values? In other words, the organization should be conscious enough to determine its practices consistent with its values. That when you phrase it that way, then you understand that this tool it goes far beyond issues involving the African American community. And so with the leadership of some of the subsequent leaders of the APS, I have urged, and Jonathan Bagger, the CEO, has expressed support that as leadership faces different challenges that are of this nature, where membership is looking for guidance in terms of what does the organization values say about a particular situation, then this is a time to use this model. So I don't know, is Youngkey still online?
Yes, I'm. Oh, well, I'm not online, but I'm in person here.
Oh, I see you. Hello, Youngkey.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Hi.
Yeah.
So
Hi.
when my presentation, oh, my camera's there, so I cannot do this. So, oh, I can see you there, Jim. So I mentioned about Delta Phi, and I said that it was initiated by you when you were the president of American Physical Society. So, as Jim mentioned, to me, this is his brand name, Delta Phi, the webinar series. But if you look around, any barriers we're talking about, that's a Delta, as I mentioned. It's all our core values to what's reality or what we wanted to achieve and where we are. So there are so many deltas. So my plan is I'm gonna expand Delta Phi, not limiting to this webinar type, but this is our kind of new brand name. Even elevate to just see such a good word because physics is in there, right? So it's a bit more toward our heart, and I think this is a amazingly powerful word and very simple and kind of it hints so many issues that we have. So Jim, I'm gonna even elevate Delta Phi as a kind of real brand name for reducing all the barriers that our society faces. So,
Yeah. Yankee, thank you for passing that information along. It was my hope, and I've expressed this to you personally, and I've said it to quite a number of people. It was my hope that I have, for those of you who don't know, delta phi actually means change physics, right? I mean, that's when physics talk about the delta, we're talking about
That's
change.
right.
So when I coined that phrase delta phi, it was about changing physics. It's about changing physics in all the ways that will allow our discipline to be open to those who want to do the work without barriers. That was my dream. So
That's
I'm
right.
happy to hear that you, Young Key, have also understood the subliminal message in that name. Thank you.
So, Pastor Jandira, I wanted more about also the Bridge program, and she also mentioned graduate education network and things like that. I mean, how are these programs progressing? Are they picking up more and more members, or do either of you have any
So,
knowledge
Jim,
about
do you want to comment on from your perspective? I also mentioned our Bridge program for the underrepresented group of students had a 1-year program to help them to
Sure.
prepare for graduate schools.
Sure. I have a few things I can say, not very many. Um, uh, Nathan, I think you were the questioner. Yankee can tell you that I am in recovery. If any of you get the pleasure of becoming the president of the APS, you will understand why past presidents need a period of recovery. And part of my recovery, unfortunately, has been that I have assiduously tried not, let's put it this way. Some presidents want to serve beyond their term. I'm not one of those. And in fact, I've never run into one of those within the organization. And so I don't have a whole bunch of information. While I was president, we were proud of the fact that the Bridge program had actually caught the attention of people on Capitol Hill. And there were partnerships that were developed. I don't know if the number has grown since my presidency. As I said, I've assiduously tried not to loom over Bob or Young Key, and so that's all I've got to say.
Certainly, it has been increased. I don't know. I don't have very recent statistics that also what we learned from each other and how we want to do it. At Chicago, actually, we wanted to have a bridge program as well, but not exactly the same as the APS is doing, but sort of our own, but linked to APS bridge program and have a different model. So I think right now we are trying to comparing that what is the best, what's not, so certainly some institutions have a much better success than other. The question is how do you really use the success, the models propagate? Because one thing that you have to realize, you cannot just pick that program and implement in your physics department without providing serious staff support and the environment that's really supporting them. Just having program itself without real serious, I'm talking about serious staff support and environmental support for those people. There are not that many. Therefore, if you don't provide specific support, it's not necessarily going successful. So I think some institutions are realizing that, when you accept that or wanted to do it, you have to be really ready to do it, prepared. So that's all I can say. But it was certainly has a quite high impact, and we have a very good positive stories from those who went through bridge programs.
And let me piggyback on one part of your comment, Young Key. So here at the University of Maryland, we don't actually have a bridge program, but we do have something that has been modeled after the bridge programs. And I've heard this comment at other places. So having a bridge program by the APS has at least gotten a number of people in the community to discuss what can we do that's tailored to our special needs. So like I said, we have something like that going on here, but it's not formally part of the bridge program.
Same as Chicago. So I think that's kind of influencing many departments. I know that UIU's University of Urbana-Champaign has also very good program similar to that, but it's slightly different.
Okay, so I have one question here from Maria Helena Tejeda Yelmans in Zoom. So she asks, is the APS interacting with DOA, NSF, etc., to provide funding for guideline design and implementation and training to help physicists create better IDE policies as part of their projects? Okay, can you hear now? Okay, so she's asking if APS is in contact with some funding agencies to get funding for guideline design and implementation and training to help physicists create better IDE policies as part of their project, so equity, diversity, and inclusion.
I don't think we have any specific funding from NSF on that topic, but we have new programs called, innovation, the grants. So if you have any good ideas to either, collecting data with the EDI in mind, or any changing policies or cultures. So that some of Jim, you are also in the committee to give out the innovation funds. We had a lot of the interest and proposals, and some received the grants from APS. It's not exactly that, but similar situations. That it's interesting to think about, and thank you for the comments.
I would like to ask Silvina and Yankee, as from the IUPAP and from the APS, with respect to the data, to try to get a diagnostics of the situation, not only of women or gender problems in science, but also of more generally about inclusion. This is an important fact to start with data, to see where we are. So I don't know if Argentina has, for example, numbers that are, I know they have a discrimination in the numbers with gender, but I don't know about other inclusions, for example, or other groups. Maybe IUPAP can also stimulate that, or if you're thinking about that. And the question to the APS is, do you and the APS have these numbers, or are you based on this evidence?
So regarding collecting data from IUPAP, we have these surveys, but the surveys are like voluntary. The respondents answer, it's not a representative sample of the physics community. We don't even know what the physics community of the world means, what the number is, what the fraction across all over the world is of people of different subgroups of physicists, or women or other groups. And so it's voluntary. From that, we collected a bunch of data, and we can gather and get some conclusions on what's the experiences of women and men and how different they are. But not exactly statistics on fraction of, for example, women in physics or things like that. Then the statistics at national level, they are usually sex, not gender. But they are, those are collected, and UNESCO collects data that is submitted from the countries. So they produce reports with statistics on the situation of scientists, people related to science in different countries. Now, at the international level, maybe it's harder to define what an underrepresented group is, because that's very dependent on each country. Each country has its own underrepresented groups. And so that's a little difficult. But we are starting thinking of, I don't know, for example, think about disabilities, accessibility, all of that, And I think that's something that we have to keep on thinking how to go on and to work in connection with the main activities that we sponsor, for example, conferences and stuff like that. But data is always complicated. And what's more complicated, as I told you, is to analyze in a more quantitative way the impact of when you implement a policy. And in that regard, I mentioned this yesterday, but I listened to a person from France who was saying something very interesting. It was about policies in education, trying to change some things related to education where the pool of people you apply to these policies is much larger, so you can do this, which is have control groups. It's like a biological experiment. So you have a control group, and then you have the group where you apply the policy. And then they are randomized throughout society and stuff like that, and then you see if there is a difference in how the control group that you haven't applied the policy to and the other one, how they perform afterwards. And I think that would be a very interesting thing to think of, how we could do that kind of social experiment, which of course it has also the moral dilemma that is related also to the development of any kind of medicine where you give placebos to a subset of people. But anyway, I think that would be a way to quantify or see the impact of policy implementations, other than having statistics that sometimes we see that things don't change that much. That's the main problem, that you reach certain percentages and then you don't move that, it stays there. But anyway.
So for APS, do we have a profile? Either you became member or you can always update your profile. So we have a lot of questionnaires. Again, it's a voluntary. So not everybody wants to, say what their gender, or then there's another column say, I don't want to, show my identity. So it's quite, it's not majority, but it is a non-negative reflection. People don't want to say it. Now, speaking about that, now we again, accessibility is another one, because now the categories have been getting bigger and bigger. It used to be just men and women and gender, and then we had also the race, the category. But as time evolves, and there are so many categories, I don't think we are all up to date in our profile, if I remember correctly. We have to continue to look at and what to be added. But again, this based on voluntary information, that's all we can do.
Just a comment, just one comment, Lilia. I think it's important to see how colorful, in the sense of diversity, each region or country is. We were talking about diversity with Nathan now during lunch. Diversity is a very important word. And even, it's like in the codes of ethics. In the codes of ethics, they're not legally binding, but that gives an excuse for people to discuss about values, about ethics in what we're doing, etc. So, so given, to raising awareness, or given the possibility of stimulating communities to talk about diversity, in each country, that would be good, because then you say, well, in every country, you define diversity as you wish, and as it corresponds, or as it should be to your region. But how colorful are you? I mean, how diverse? So I think it's good that we are beginning. I mean, not today, but I mean that this is already becoming part of our awareness program. I think it's a good topic to talk about and to create awareness.
So may I?
So just,
Um,
go ahead.
There is another source of data and statistics in the United States in the physics community. It's the American Institute of Physics, the AIP. They actually, in my opinion, have better statistics than the APS does. And we typically have been working in close contact with them.
Yeah, and let me tell you that the surveys that we ran from IUPAP, they were actually done by the Statistical Research Center of AIP. So it was always them I mean, we were kind of the mediators with the community so that we advertised, but the surveys were elaborated together with them, and they put it together and had a server where people, and now they also anonymized the data so that it can be used for studies by people, because then it's also the privacy of the data. You have to be very careful with that and reliable for people to be willing to respond. Plus, there are some also qualitative responses in very small communities are complicated, because there were these stories about, for example, Mexican students telling about harassment or even abuse situations, and other people from Mexico immediately realized who was saying and who she was accusing. So that's a very complicated kind of thing.
Hi, Jim. It's me. I made a question before the break. I wanted to know if you have some thoughts about that question, and let me refresh for you. It has 2 points. The first one was basically, what do you think is missing for like truly integration of minorities? The second one is, well, I believe that there is like kind of like opposite like a movement that goes against like inclusion and diversity, even though all the policies that the effort that we're making. If you agree, and if you do, what are the possible reasons that you find based on your experience and your position?
So it's a complicated environment, and there are no simple answers. First of all, there have been traditional barriers, and I think part of the reason that Nathan wanted me to speak about my own personal experience is to illustrate in the small, and one example at least, how these barriers show up. First of all, before any young person gets to university, we have a system in the United States where the funding levels depend on the wealth of the community. And so if you have capable young people, but they are confined to communities without great wealth, they will not receive the same quality of education. So it starts there in my country. However, that's only the beginning, because there are barriers within each community. So for example, I know I have talked to some parents who are very much against having their children go to college a substantial distance away. They would prefer them to stay close to home. So this is a cultural issue of of a slightly different nature, but it certainly exists. I've seen it over and over again. And this is not just in the African American community, but in the Hispanic American community. I've encountered the same sorts of things. And Young Key can speak to her community and whether she sees this. And so what I say is yes, we have to talk about it and keep the issue in front of ourselves, but to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of thinking that one size fits all, because that's not going to work. The other thing is part of the question you were saying, there are a lot of people working against it. Yes, I tried to make that very clear in my presentation this morning, that that's actually the norm. If you look at historical time scales in my country, that whenever there's an effort to remove privilege, those with privilege will push back vigorously. So that shouldn't deter people from pushing for the morally correct thing. And unfortunately, when you say it's up to morals, people's morals differ. And that's why we have to talk to find a solution, because talking is better than violence, and it's also better than domination.
I would like to ask something to Jim, that he mentioned that people are not willing to move away from home to pursue studies. Do you think that with online teaching, or now these kind of things, that could be overcome or something, or solved? I understand it's not the same. Personal contact is so much different. But could this be used? I was wondering about that now that you mentioned this. And also, for example, for a In Europe, they have these Marie Curie fellowships that require that people move around. And for women, sometimes it's more difficult to do that. And maybe they could just drop that condition if things could be done online. And I am wondering what combination of that could be used to increase inclusion, in a sense.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. And I don't hold myself to be an expert, but I can share with you anecdotal observations and stories. So far, what seems to be occurring in online learning is that extraordinarily gifted young people coming from deprived backgrounds seem to be making their way to a higher quality of education via this means. Now, these young people I'm talking about are very unusual, and I've not seen a lot of them, but definitely in those cases, the online access can be a lifesaver. If you move out to a slightly larger group, um, I, I, how do I say this? That first group that I'm talking about, well, let's say it this way. Each individual's need to have social interaction with others is very different. It's an individualized statement. And so if you have a young person who, I hate to say this, but if it was kind of like me when I was a teenager, I would have loved to have online learning because I was one of those kids who wanted to just go to if you in school, if you wanted me to learn something, the best way for me to do that was to go to the corner and you leave me alone. And so whether I learned it from you letting me be in a corner in a school classroom or somewhere else, it was totally irrelevant to me. And that's a kind of learning style. But how broad is that learning style? It's certainly not the majority. And so, for this reason, I've only seen one online program that actually works. I don't know if you physicists know this, but there's an online master's degree program that started at Georgia Tech, and it works. It works tremendously. But the secret for why it works is very interesting. We evaluated this for this online learning back when I was an advisor to President Obama. And so by this means, I actually got a chance to look at 70 or 80 such programs. This program at Georgia Tech, I predicted would succeed. I actually made a comment in the New York Times that you can go back and look at. And it succeeds because they understood the need to build a social network around the online learning. And so that's the trick for why this program has worked. And so that's sort of the next stage that I have not heard any organization take the challenge saying, we're going to wrap a social structure around something like, say, Khan Academy, which is online. I don't know how many people are familiar with Khan Academy, but the materials are excellent. But what is lacking there is to build a social structure around it that would draw a substantial number of young people in who are not in that first group I talked about.
So this is a short comment about the previous topic. We were talking about the database. In the last International Conference Women in Physics, we have this workshop on the small data studies. And the US team, which was the organizer, presented some database they have working on. And it was so nice, so wonderful that we were asking them if we can share and things like that. The problem I see if we want to get one universal database is that so complicated in each country. So we have to define really very basic registers so everybody can participate. So I think this is going to be one of the resolutions to look for a database universal somehow, because we have found that the team leaders really cannot get the data. They don't have the resources, they don't have the information to write these reports. So we were thinking about this proposal to build some basic scheme to involve all the countries, more or less, to have all this information. It's going to be very complicated, but I think I hope we can end up with something like that
to be used for the women in physics for our working group. On the other hand, this is a question for Valeria, because I have, is Valeria there?
Yes,
No.
I'm here.
Okay. I'm going to ask in Spanish and then just briefly describe.
Thank you.
I'm curious about this. Me pregunto mucho porque he escuchado de muchos profesores las quejas de cómo los estudiantes ahora no se despegan del teléfono celular. Entonces, me pregunto si en estas nuevas iniciativas de enseñanza, está relacionado con lo que se hablaba antes, en estas nuevas iniciativas de enseñanza se está considerando esta nueva dinámica, esta nueva población que tiene otros hábitos y tiene otras herramientas para aprender en la enseñanza de STEM. No sé si… ¿Do I have to translate? No, okay.
¿Respondo? ¿Está bien o quieren traducir? Muy buena pregunta. La idea es que sí, poder integrar los distintos elementos, como por ejemplo es el smartphone hoy, y hay algunos ejemplos de profesores trabajando en experimentos en los cuales utilizan alguna app para medir, ¿sí? O hacer algunas fórmulas. Entonces integran un elemento cotidiano en la vida de las y los estudiantes para llevarlo a las clases. Tiene que ver con metodologías y de aprendizaje activo. Así que creo que hay bastantes oportunidades para trabajar. Lo mismo, hay algunas iniciativas que buscan integrar ChatGPT o inteligencia artificial a las clases y cómo hacerlo de forma significativa para que contribuyan, ¿no? Y no que sean una barrera para los estudiantes. Así que no sé si te respondí.
You want to understand?
It's okay. I didn't understand the question. I didn't understand the answer.
It's about the use of cell phones for education. But let me tell you something about cell phones in education. There is this app, Firefox, which is very interesting. And we, together with people from Taiwan and also students, the student chapter of the IEEE Magnetic Society, we have a collaborative project to measure the Earth's magnetic field using this Firefox. Usually it gives, it's not very accurate because you have lots of interference to measure this thing, which is super, super weak compared to all the interference. But it's very interesting because you help kids think about the 3 dimensions and the fact that the field is in the 3 dimensions and that you have different directions and stuff. And so we share the data, and the IEEE Magnetic Society student chapter, they post the data. So if you're interested in getting some schools participating in this project, you can contact me. High schools.
Sí, lo que comentaban con respecto a cómo incluir, por ejemplo, los dispositivos, los celulares, eso le llamamos educación gamificada, o es parte también de la educación gamificada. Y la idea es que orientar al estudiante a utilizar también, por ejemplo, la inteligencia artificial, que también UNESCO brinda capacitación en educación superior, por ejemplo, cómo los estudiantes y los docentes deben de manejar adecuadamente la inteligencia artificial. Y hoy en día no solamente es ChatGPT, hay otras más que se puede incluir también en clase.
Exacto, hay varias guías para indagar sobre esto, y creo que hay una gran oportunidad para todos los que tenemos la labor de educar en todos los niveles.
I have a comment, and maybe for Nathan, because it has to do with the Perimeter Institute. I know there's a very good relationship and a partnership between the ICTP-SAIFR and the perimeter. And the perimeter has a very, very good department, or have a good project or program for education, and they have very good material. And now I believe they were translating that to Spanish. That is an excellent opportunity also. I mean, first of all the material they have in Spanish, it could reach much more because it's excellent. And maybe the ICTP could also help also in Latin America. And then maybe one can think about a similar platform to gain inclusion on diversity and gender. I mean, somehow working together with the perimeter. I'm just thinking aloud, thinking about possible collaborations, not only with the APS, with the IUPAP, with others, like the physical societies in Latin America, CLAFI, CLAF, if it were more active, and even the perimeter.
Yes, so as I told Lazaro, this is for high school students, not for, so we have programs, for example, the Spanish, we have online workshops, but it's for the teachers. So the way Perimeter works is they develop the whole library of materials for high school teachers to use in their classroom. So they have workshops for the high school teachers, and then the ideas the high school teachers use in the classroom. So that's what we have imitated. So we translated the material into Portuguese and Spanish. And in fact, we used the Innovation Award from APS to translate into Spanish. So they have an innovation fund. So we used their funds to do the translation into Spanish. So it worked very well. So this was during the pandemic. So we did everything online. But yeah, that's obviously here in person, it's more in the version in Portuguese. And
you have this on your site?
Yeah, so it's all, so our site links to the Perimeter. So Perimeter has all of this free, it's online. And they allowed us to translate all their material into Spanish and Portuguese, and it's on their site. So on our site, it just gives a link to their site.
Okay.
So we did the translation, but all the material is on their site. So you have to download it. I mean, it's a large amount of material, but it's all free.
Okay.
So yeah, it's excellent for high school teachers. So for high school students, we have courses. We don't have, which uses the material, but it's really for the high school teachers to use in the classroom. But it's excellent material.
I wanted to ask you something because I was thinking related to some programs that you had. Now I don't remember which program made me think of this other possibility, which is, do you have like re-entry grants for people who drop out of the, because you have the bridge program, but that's between bachelor and whatever they want to do afterwards. And what about people who start their careers? That happened with women with kids, for example, and then they drop and they want to go back. And there used to be some support called re-entry grants or something. I don't know if you have anything of that sort.
So now my memory, there are grants, but I don't know that's NSF grants or APS. Jim, do you know?
I don't, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but there are such grants, and also in U.S. We use a lot stop the clock. Yes. That is in the university. If you are this, pregnant, and then it started as you have to ask, you have to tell your chair or dean or chair usually. But then people thought that that's a little bit of, you have to go and ask. That's probably another barrier. So then many institutions saying the default is, stop the clock for 1 year. So that kind of thing is a little bit implemented. I think a lot of, again, institution to institution, there are different support. Also for our students and postdocs, in our case, for example, if you're pregnant and have to post, we provide the 6 months of the salaries without them working. So that's all I'm aware of.
Okay. And then I remember something else that you say about support. What about daycare facilities to attend conferences or support for daycare or whatever? Because, for example, Argentina now started a line of funding. It's the Ministry of Science, actually, for the organizers of conferences if they want to set up, I don't know, something so that women can bring their kids. It's a special line of funding to cover that. And my own opinion about international conferences is that that's kind of impossible. But I don't know if you have any experience on that, on daycare, and support for women to go to conferences and things like that.
Right. So, Jim, you should add whatever I say because I'm not 100% aware of all the programs. That these days conferences we always, I don't know, we are forcing them, but strongly recommend for all the daycare or some possibilities associated with the conferences, so that people can bring their child and. I don't know. Jim, do you know March meeting, what kind of a daycare service we provide?
Well, it has been
Okay.
it has been a topic. Sorry. It has been a topic that I recall some discussion. I don't remember an actual program being started, but it's certainly something that people had talked about, especially for the March meeting. But as I said, I've been disconnected from the society for the last couple of years.
But certainly we provide all the options because we know that at least our staff know the conference location, meeting location, what kind of options are there. But this is a huge meeting, so APS cannot take care of all that. It has to be providing all the information. That's a minimum. But most of I cannot say most, some universities, including my own university, has the special grant. It's not, it's not competition. So if you are going to the conference and you need to take care, then this university gives money for that. So universities that provide some of that kind of the support. Yeah.
So,
Okay, so I try to attend the March meeting every year, and I noticed that in the past it was possible. There was some special room devoted for the daycare, but I'm not sure if this has been canceled because somebody said that it was too expensive because all the issues involve health and everything, so insurance, yes, things like that. So it was very expensive. I don't remember how many dollars an hour, things like that. But I'm not sure about this. But there used to be. I'm pretty sure. I don't know about now this at the moment.
Certainly, I think accountability, reliability is a big issue because most of cases we are okay, but if there's any small accident or that, then it's going to be very so. We're trying to protect all those, and then you ended up very expensive situation. But again, I'm not 100% sure about exactly where we are. But this is something that I'll bring that up. And Karen, since you're a board member, make sure I bring it up too.
I will. So I have some. If nobody wants, I have something else to ask. I've seen that you organize these mentorship conferences. And I've heard that some organizations, they have like mentorship sessions. It's like at some point during the conference, more senior people meet sort of at random with early career scientists and students, and they start to talk. And so there is a place during the conference for this exchange. I don't know if you have that experience with APS conferences or something.
Well, I don't, again, Jim, correct me. I don't have any experiences like that, any specific programs in APS, but I was president of a Korean American Scientists and Engineers Association. We had an annual meeting with like 1,000 people coming, and there, so we, in registration, we asked anybody like to be mentor, mentee at the conference. So it was a very successful. So we had a separate evening session so that they can meet each other and networking. One thing that that program started super exciting and everybody was so enthusiastic. It's good, but I think what's missing is that mentor-mentee, that connection doesn't last beyond that. So yes, it's okay. Maybe one moment is better than nothing, but it would be nice if you have sort of lasting the relationship. But one thing we did actually as a part of 2020, I was chair of Division of Particles and Fields, so community wide we have the so-called snowmass for making long-term strategic plan in our field. So at that time, it was, of course, because of COVID, we did all the virtually. What we did, created a program called Coffee Collisions. So that coffee collisions, meaning, you know, when you go to cafe and sit down and colliding, meaning interactions. So that's where we sign up for any mentee, mentor. So we encourage them to meet like even 15 minutes or 30 minutes once a month. So in fact, I signed up with one of a postdoc at Caltech. So that we have that communication 3-4 years so far. So during COVID we started. So because this was even easier, because going to somewhere, meeting and having coffee may take longer, but at Zoom, you can do even 15 minutes of a chat or 30 minute chat per month. That was not a lot to ask. Yes. So that, actually we don't know where we are because it started 2020. My personal experience is I was connected with one postdoc. It was amazing. Even 15 minutes a month after a couple of years, we become really close to each other and we share a lot of information. So that's one example of a division, one of division in APS.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. Yes. Well, no, the other thing I wanted to ask was about harassment, if you have a harassment policy in conferences, and then what happens, I mean, because conferences are very short, and if we are going to take any action, it's, you have to, I mean, the only thing that we can think of doing is try to calm things down, but then you need to give time also for the person who is accused to be able to defend himself or herself, and there is not enough time during the conference. And then sometimes in the community that person gets canceled or something. Is there any particular policy about that?
That's really, a lot of discussions, and we're trying to improve that. And there was an incident. It was not organized by APS, but it was an international conference. I don't know which organization organized it, but of course a lot of the physicists all around the world. And that we are taking, it was not a secret that the one person had a little bit of history of not treating women properly, and it took place at the conference. So that person was the co-chairs of the conference asked him to not to come back. So he was removed. So that became one of our discussion topic in APS, so that,
Small world.
They said that this is publicly known, but a lot of people associated with they're also the APS members. So therefore, even though that conference was not organized by APS, now we are dealing with how to, they take care of this situation, not only current this case, but also using this as for thinking about future policies. So it is a lot to be talked about before, but when something really happened, then we thinking further in depth and trying to figure out what kind of policies are really needed. That's right. That's right.
I have something. I have a question for for Jim and also for Yankee. In the U.S., what are the current policies or effective actions or measures that are being done with respect to Hispanic physicists or the black population? Is there any concrete measure like special scholarships, talking about physics, about undergraduates, or because I mean, you mentioned, Jim, that Delta Phi and others. Maybe I just overlooked something, but some concrete thing we can get inspired with, or we can think. I'm just mentioning scholarship or something. Is there anything it is worth mentioning?
Jim, could you?
You're muted, Jim.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I was trying to say there is a residue that is left. There was a report released by the American Institute of Physics called The Time Is Now, which was aimed at increasing the number of African Americans who participated in the physics program. It was also an effort to create a financial base for that. It wasn't just I'm going to say it wasn't just getting people to change their behavior. It was also about trying to create basically follow scholarships for fellowships.
Yeah.
What has happened since then is, of course, very interesting, namely that there was a substantial grant made to the AIP for this purpose from the Simons Foundation, as I
Correct.
recall.
Yeah, that's right.
And however, with this recent Supreme Court ruling about admissions, it has thrown a pall over all such efforts as far as I understand. And so I have not heard anything in the last 6 months about that effort. Maybe Young Key knows more because she chimed in a moment ago.
No, I think what you said is right. There was a Simons Foundation. Actually, there's a substantial grant given. This AIP, together with APS, this proposal, and that the exactly what kind of plan and how it's going to be done is to be worked out.
But it was a kind of, the idea was to have like scholarships, to have more undergraduate students from the black community mainly. But then, Jim, you said that now it's sort of pulled back because of this, what happened in Harvard with equal access and non-discrimination or whatever?
There's a lot of nervousness in higher education in the United States about what can and cannot be done under the new ruling. And so the initial thing that I have seen in lots and lots of institutions is that people have been ultra cautious. And they do not wish to be caught in lawsuits and, that sort of thing that the Supreme Court ruling opens. However, curiously, I don't know, maybe Young Key can chime in here, but curiously, as I talk to people in physics departments, there seems to be some appetite to continue to push, not to cross any legal boundaries, but certainly not to run away from where those boundaries are. So there are efforts I'm aware of where people are still asking, how can we be consistent with the Supreme Court ruling, but also increase the access, particularly for not just African Americans, but non-traditional communities. So I see that a lot. Young Key, maybe you can chime in here.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jim. If I want to add one thing, I think this restriction, to my mind, also not violating, but how to take an opportunity to get something more. One example I mentioned about QWIP, so the Conference for Undergraduate Women in Physics, or any other specific, the group. So our new ruling is that we cannot exclude, let's say this is a conference for women, we can call it, but don't exclude the men to coming in. In some sense, I think I'd like to utilize even other, I am running some other women in STEM kind of workshop and all that. That it's okay not to change, keep their word, but I'm including more the men who want to change the culture. So in that sense, I think it's good because, women workshop for women, and only women are there. Oh, this is great, but we have to, sorry males, we have to educate male. If they are not our allies, we are not successful. So I think, of course, we have to be a bit careful how we include them. But I think certainly I have been starting including those male colleagues who have the good intention of change the culture. So having them included so that doesn't look, we are not exclusive. So, I can take this as an opportunity to do something else beyond that restrictions that we are not happy about.
Let me just say one other thing, that since this is an international audience, there's some subtleties to the Supreme Court ruling that has forbidden race to be used as a factor for admission. It's very peculiar. It turns out that the ruling said you could use race for admissions for the military academy. So for the Air Force Academy, for West Point, for the Naval Academy, they're still allowed to take race into account in admitting students. But there's a really weird exception that the Supreme Court says, although race cannot be used as a factor, students are still allowed to talk about how their particular ethnic demography has impacted on their educational trajectory. So you're still allowed to talk about it, but it cannot be a sole determining factor. So it's rather complicated, and that's part of why people are trying to figure out what this all means.
So I had a question maybe also about APS. So one thing we have encountered is a problem in getting data, especially about ethnicity. So we have tried to do it with obviously we have hundreds of activities. We ask people, 50% say other when you ask for ethnicity. So I don't know how it works. So now the National Fund.
What are the options? What are the other options?
Okay, right. So we have a problem that we were doing it in English, which is probably not the one reason why they just didn't understand. But it was Caucasian, Afro-descendant, Asian, Shandira, do you remember anything else? Indigenous. Whereas in Brazil, Afro-descendant is translated into pardo or preto. So that might have been part of it. But part of it is that people, I think in Brazil maybe are mixed and they think, oh, if I put one, I can't put another. I don't know. But how does it work? Is it APS that gets the data?
I thought about 10%, if my memory is correct, around 10% don't want to identify, but we had a large fraction says that, but categories are different. I think we are, Jimmy, tell me if I'm correct. We have white, black, Hispanic, Asian, or some sort of like Native American, or that kind of. So in terms of yours sounds very complicated. Then they have to know all the ancestor. I have to do my gene test to know all that.
So the subtleties in Portuguese, actually Asian is amarelo. It's yellow.
Oh.
So that you would not use, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's tricky. So
that's
there's
right.
subtlety. But in any case, it's the APS that does the polling. Is that right?
We have, as I said, the AIP has a very good, they are very good, this is the American Institute for Physics that does quite a bit of a good job in getting statistics. And APS, when we have a membership profile, if you want to become member or any that, yes. you have the questionnaire. There you answer, all those questions. But of course, not 100% answer. So we have a category that I don't want to identify.
But you have to be a member, otherwise you're not counted. Is that right?
That's right. That membership profile.
And
so
AIP
we don't.
The
AIP, I think they have a much broader statistics. Is that right, Jim? Yeah.
So how does AIP get the statistics? How do they?
Department. They go to
yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Jim.
Unfortunately, we started at 12:30, and my life is such that I have to leave now because it's. I
That's great, Jim. Thanks very much for being around and.
Well, I hope I wish everyone, all the participants the best. This is a very important effort, and I'm happy to see that there are people who around the world understand the importance of this. So goodbye for the day, and until the next time, Nathan.
Thank you. Thank you, Valeria.
Bye, thank you.
It's just. Oh. No é para ela. No, it's just a short comment about people not answering the applications, the ethnicity or the color. I mean, this is not only happening here. I think it also happens at CNPq, right? And also FAPESP, that people feel afraid or not comfortable about telling what they are. I don't know exactly why. Maybe we'll talk about this tomorrow. I don't know. But I think it might be the same reason. So that they think that if they declare, so the application can somehow be affected. I don't know. It's just a short comment.
So in this sense, we know that nothing is a secret, right? If even though it's not that organization wanted to sell this data, but this whole the world nothing is really secure. So I think people feel that if somebody wants to find out my identity, if I answer all that, it's not the fault of organization who surveys, but some other ways they will be exposed, and people feel that they can be discriminated because of that information. So I think that's concerns everybody have. I mean, I have a concern. It's not, just in general. I mean, I figure it's my data is all out there, and if somebody wants to use it against me, they can do it, right? So it's a concern for all of us, and especially if you're minorities, that even worse.
So should we take a break? No. Okay, so let's take a break. So we'll be back at 4 o'clock. So at 4 o'clock will be internal discussion. People can debate things. Conclusion is too strong, but discussion is safer, I think. Okay. I should remind that tonight at 7:30, people are all invited to this dinner. So if you don't know where it is, sorry. So it's called Bovinus. It's just near the station that you change to go from the yellow line to the green line. So the easiest thing is if people go together. I'll put during the coffee break, I'll put a map on the blackboard just so people know where it is. Is there a Samba club? Yeah, but it probably starts, what time Samba club? 11, right? She's asking about Samba club.